My name?
Yeah.
Alma McEnery. I was.
Who were your parents?
William Palmer McEnery and Ellen May Robson.
Good. How many years have you been on yours now yourself? How old are you?
I'll be 90 if I'm living in February.
Wow. Oh, I hope you make it. February 25th.
February 25th, that's
Yeah.
right.
And where are you staying now then?
Oh, what's the name of that? It's Extendicare, isn't
Yeah,
it?
Sinclair, Georgetown.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you remember, Catherine, when the McEnery family first came to the Ballinafad area? Have you got that, Catherine?
Mom estimates it was about 1880.
I see. And where did they settle? Which farm?
It would be the farm where Ray and Kate lived more recently, which would be Lot 32, Concession 9 East, in what was then Squeezing, now called Halton Hills.
Okay, were they pioneers on that farm then? The McEnerys?
We don't know that.
No.
I can't answer.
1880 they probably bought from somebody else.
I can't answer that.
That's okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. You still have lots of relatives living around the Fad? You don't need all the names, but
Now you mean, or back then?
Right now, there's still some McEnerys and Sinklers around there, especially the McEnerys.
Well, you see, there's Wilma, but she's not closely related.
No.
Garnet.
McEnery's, well, there aren't very many.
No.
I live in that area still.
Yeah.
And the other one would be David McEnery and Wayne McEnery.
Yeah.
But other than that, most people have left.
Where are you staying, Catherine?
Well, I live on the back of my parents' farm, so it's still Lot 32, Concession 10 West.
Okay. And when the family first came in, they were making their living. How were they doing that?
Well, I imagine by logging and one thing and another.
Oh yeah.
There were good bushes on those properties.
There's a lot of clearing to be done then.
Oh
I
yes,
guess.
there was at one time.
And then they would start to farm, I guess.
Well, that's right.
Mm.
But it must have been rough farming, wasn't it?
Boy. Oxen and pulling out stumps and all that stuff.
Oh,
And lots of stones.
Lots of stones.
Not the stones.
The old stone boat.
Yep.
Do you know where the McEnerys came from before they came there? Were they over?
We should know that, Catherine, but
Yeah.
Ireland, but it was Ireland.
Ireland originally, but we're not sure of the transition.
Oh, no, dear.
Whether they came directly to this area or elsewhere.
Maybe to the States. Some people came to the States. Okay. So, do you consider yourself Irish then, or what?
Yes, because on my side, both my parents were Irish.
Okay.
Catherine has some Scotch.
I see. Yes, that's right. Was there some competition with the Scots and the Irish in those days?
Not that I recall.
No.
No.
They're all from the UK, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. What about church? Did you folks go to church, the McEnerys?
Well, we don't now, but we did.
Yeah.
And it was, you see, that church, as you know, was built a Presbyterian church.
Right.
And then at the time of, what do you call it? Church.
Union.
Yeah, it went united. There was a Methodist church up by the Temperance Hall.
Okay.
But the McEnerys were Presbyterian and had
Okay.
attended that church previous to you.
Were there any Catholics around the community at that time? Do you remember? There was never a Catholic church.
There was never a Catholic church, but I never heard a great deal. Probably there was no difference made back then. I don't know.
Maybe. That would be good.
Yeah. I don't recall, ever. The word Catholic doesn't mean much to me until I got
Right.
older.
Who were some of the other families on the 9th line there that you were close to?
Well, as a child, I was on the 6th line, you see.
Oh, okay.
And that was where the McLeans were, the Beswicks, and the Swindlehursts. Jimmy Swindlehurst.
Okay. So you didn't live on the 9th line until you were married? Then?
I didn't.
No.
Mm-mm.
And do you remember anything about the McKays down the 9th line? Sandy and his
Oh, and
people?
we used to have picnics there, and I remember one year we were going for a picnic over in that rough property that was at Sandy McKay's, you know, over
yeah. Over the
yeah,
ravine.
and Grandma McEnery got in the car and sat right on Mother's pie.
Oh dear.
Hope it wasn't lemon meringue.
It definitely was.
Yeah. Do you remember Aggie at all, Sandy's wife?
Oh yes, I
Yeah.
always liked Aggie.
Yeah.
We got along fine.
Good. They
Oh,
married.
Sandy, we all got along well, you know, but
There'd be parties at night too, I guess. In the wintertime, you'd go up and down the line and...
well, there were, but as you see, myself, was not close enough
Mm-hmm.
over on the 6th line. That's
Yeah.
quite a trip with her.
By the time you were married, was Sandy still on that farm, or was
Oh,
she?
yeah.
Yeah,
I just don't know when Sandy left.
43, I
Well,
believe
Sandy
it.
and Aggie,
I believe it was 43.
maybe so,
Yeah. So just about the time you went there.
to town.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This, we're trying to get back to the First Nations people, the Indian people, before all of this happened. Did you ever hear of any stories of there being villages or Indian communities around in the old days before the white man came?
I can't think I ever did.
No, when I asked Mom that earlier, she said she remembers hearing about it like within the last 20 years or something,
Uh-huh.
but doesn't remember it from the period when she was younger.
Right.
Do you remember any of the other children at school showing you, particularly the boys, arrowheads or funny stones that they'd found?
No, I don't recall.
Sort of thing boys often
Yes,
collect.
I know, they do.
Yeah. Let's talk for a minute about your marriage then, and your partner. Who was your husband?
Norman.
And you were married when?
43. September
Yeah.
25th, 1943.
Were they well settled in the Ballinafad area, the Sinclairs?
Oh, yes, they were.
Do you know much about their story? You said they were Scots, maybe. were you?
Only that I made a mistake by moving in.
Oh, I see. Not mother-in-law problems or something, was it?
Well, poor ground, no, we didn't have that. No, I don't want to get into all
No,
that.
that's fine. It's quite all right. How did you happen to meet Norma? Where did you meet? Do you remember?
Well, I can't tell you that, but you see, we were raised in the same community, you might
Yeah.
say. And then Stan, well, he hadn't married Pearlie yet then, but they got married then, you see.
Oh, okay. That was Norm's brother.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then the other relationship that you alluded to earlier was that actually Mom's uncle married Dad's sister.
That's
So
right.
that was Ray and Kate.
That's
So
right, Kathy.
there were already, Mom and Dad were the third marriage of Sinclairs and McEnery's.
See, it's starting to sound like a conspiracy or something. Oh, dear.
So Mom was really good friends always with like Dad's sisters. They just grew up together through the church choirs and all that kind of thing. So.
Okay, can you mention your children, Alma, for us, and where they are now?
My children.
Yeah, Catherine and Brian.
Well, Catherine, you would know better what you're both doing than where you are.
Do you want to put that in?
Well, Brian lives in Acton, and he works for an agricultural company at this point. Do you want the name of it?
Yeah. No?
Woodrill Farms
Okay.
in Guelph.
Wow.
I live, as I mentioned, right in the Ballinafad community, and I work at Sheridan College in Oakville.
Wow.
And do you want the next generation as well?
Sure.
Brian has two sons, Brent and Clark, and his wife's name is Sue. And Brent and Clark are still both in university, so are still settled in the Acton area. I also have two sons, Ryan and Mark, and my husband's name is Mel, and Mark works for Toronto for Health Canada, and Ryan works for Bell Technologies.
And what does Mel do? Does he farm?
No, we just have a small property, so he has an extensive garden, but he's a property manager for a development company.
So you might say none of the family are farming in the Ballinafad area anymore.
That's correct. Yeah. We have a very productive market garden on our property, but that's as close to farming as there is.
Yeah, there's not that much food produced around the Ballinafad area anymore.
No, there isn't.
No.
No, it's not really a farming area. No.
I guess that's why young people would leave the community, go to find work somewhere else.
I guess if they wanted farming in their background.
Right. Do you remember the village of Ballinafad at all? What businesses were there, Alma?
Well, there was the blacksmith shop
Right.
and the mill
Feed mill.
and the store. Those were the main. And then the minister's house was just up the line,
Yeah.
a little piece.
Right. Was Bert Rogers there then?
Oh, yes.
Not a big business, but
No.
you might
but
fix your car if you were stuck or something.
That's right. That's about it.
Yeah.
And then Mum was mentioning the first people she remembers at the general store were the Parnells.
Yes. Graham Farnell.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And then the next ones?
Did Miriam come after that?
No, he came after us.
Oh, yes, of course you were in this.
Yeah. My dad and Jim and Millie ran the store for
That's right,
for
I
quite a
know.
while, and someone said, did you say that Pearlie worked for him
Yes,
in the store sometimes?
she did.
Your
And
sister.
she stayed right there at
Yeah.
your mom and dad's. Yeah.
I don't remember her babysitting me, so...
Mm-hmm.
I don't remember hearing the word babysitting. It didn't.
No.
It wasn't a real popular word like it's got become.
I think I had Renee Allen for one.
Yes,
Yeah.
that's right.
Yeah. What was the social life around the Fad in those days after you were married there?
Well, I guess we didn't look for too much.
No?
You know, we farmed, and by the time night came, you were ready to sit down.
Must have been the odd euchre party, though, maybe?
Oh, yeah, there were lots. And Bert McEnery used to walk up and we'd play 500.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
That's my uncle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You spoke of dances at the hall.
Yes.
What she called the Temperance Hall.
That's
At
right.
that point. And then the Sinklers were great dancers, so there was always lots of people around the Sinklers. Everybody gravitated there because it was a family of
Yeah.
11 to start with, so there was always somebody home. And even when I got to be remembering, it was quite often at night, after dinner was finished, you'd push the table back, somebody be on the piano, somebody on the violin, and that's where we all learned to dance, was the kitchen
I
floor.
remember one Christmas we had at Grandma and Grandpa McEnery's on the 6th line. And that's when my cousins and that came. And Uncle Cam, you remember him.
Yeah, I do.
And he was crippled, and
Yeah.
so they got him loaded on the table and back against the wall.
Oh,
And he played the mouth organ,
Oh,
and that's what we had for music.
I see. We're very interested in violins in this project.
Oh, yeah.
Who used to play the violin that you remember?
Well, who did our Jesse when he got older, but I can remember when he was learning to play.
Someone said that Sandy played the violin.
Yeah, Sandy
sometimes.
McKay. Yeah, he did.
You still have his violin.
Is that right?
Yeah, my son has it.
For goodness sake.
He's a musician.
And then Ernie, of course, later on.
Yeah, and then Ernie played.
Ernie McEnery.
And didn't Uncle Gear or Uncle Fred?
Yeah,
Uncle
Gear did.
Sinclair.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But then they moved off down to Milton, you see.
Which in those times was a long ways away.
I know. I went down there on my bike for holidays.
Did you?
Yeah. 'Cause he married my aunt.
Yeah,
right.
I know.
What was your relation to Cam? I'm just interested because we've
Well,
interviewed Eileen McEnery.
I can't. I mean,
Cam and your father were brothers.
say that again.
Uncle Cam.
Oh, Cam. I didn't know.
Yeah.
I was thinking of the other Sinclair.
Yeah. No, not
No.
Cam was an uncle then.
Uncle Cam.
Oh, yeah, Uncle Cam. Yeah.
Right. He worked in the tannery. Eh?
Yeah. And Aunt Annie sewed gloves at home
Oh yeah.
at the glove factory.
The glove factory. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's right. Remember anything about sports games or teams? Were there any?
Well, they used to have a hockey team, you know. F.J. Shortle was one of the main ones on it.
Yeah, that's right.
And
Floyd.
Floyd.
French.
right.
French.
Yeah.
A lot of those.
Garnet played a bit. Garnet was the manager.
Yeah.
I played a bit myself on that team.
It was fun. It was fun.
What about softball? I remember playing softball right across from the Sinclair farm there on the other corner of the 9th line.
Do you?
On the northeast corner.
I've heard of that. Yes.
Yeah.
I don't remember that.
I
but
heard of them playing ball down in Linden.
Yes, my dad used to play
Yeah.
down there.
Uh,
That's right. And then we played on the 8th line corner sometimes, just in the farmer's fields.
I know. Yeah.
Wherever it was smooth. So on, but yeah, we won a few ball games too. Do you want to say a little bit, Alma, about the church, how active it was, and what you felt about it yourself in those days?
Well, it was very active back then, but then it became almost wondering if we'd have to close the doors for a few years.
Yeah.
But it did spruce up again.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know what's going to happen now. You see, it's been closed now. What did I tell you, Captain?
it was open again last Sunday.
Was it?
So it was just closed for the month of July. But I think a lot of the stories show that certainly the church was the heart of the community, and that's where most of the social activities evolved from.
Right. I wouldn't doubt you were in the choir there for a while.
Yes.
I was just going to, one of her interesting anecdotes is the choir would tell them about Mrs. Foreman.
Oh, Mrs. Foreman. You remember
I remember
the
the Foremans, yeah, he accepted me into church membership, I think.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Well, poor Mrs. Foreman, she used to work with us a lot, and she'd say, "You girls," we'd get laughing, you know. We didn't know what we were laughing at half the time. And she'd sit there, though, with her foot, just her toes in the shoe, and that was holding the boot on. Shit's bad feet. And they bothered her, you know, and she'd sit there, well, then wondered why we were laughing. You can just see her.
Oh, dear.
So this was Mom and Margie and Florence, who were Dad's sisters, and then Norma McDougall and who was Normie McKechnie.
Yeah, I remember
So a
that.
whole bunch of them, and they all laughed. Well, one's the last surviving one, but they all used to laugh about these choir practices where they did more laughing than they did singing.
Well, we hated to miss choir practice. And I think that was why we had so much fun in it.
Great, yeah. Yes. You said it kind of went down for a while and you were afraid you might have to close it. You know, what would be some of what was happening or wasn't happening around that the church was in such hard times there?
I don't know, unless they just were losing an interest. They probably got an interest in something else. And then they got running their families. to play ball on Sundays,
Uh-huh.
and that caused quite a commotion for a while at Ballinafad.
There were quite a few new families coming into the
They
community.
were just starting to come in then.
Yeah, they
Mhm.
weren't joining very much. Eh?
No, no.
Did you get to know those people, or were they hard to know, or
Not well, because we didn't live the same kind of lives at all, you know.
Uh-huh.
There were some good people, don't
Yeah.
get me wrong, but
Some are coming in now, I think.
I think there's some kind of new, when they talk about the people coming to church now, I don't know them at all,
Yeah.
so.
Just thinking back over the years from the McEnery and then the Sinclair years, what are some of the good things you remember? What was good about living in that community? Any warm memories? Or
I can mind your dad. One time when I went to, that's after I was married, 43. Of course, Norton's had a few bags of grain for me to take. And Jim came to the door and he said, well, that's one thing I've got to say about Chester and Grant Wright and some of them. They can't send a woman for chop.
because they weren't married, probably.
That's right.
Yeah,
Oh dear. I know.
And tell them some of your stories about school, walking to school.
You were walking all the way to Peacock, were you?
Yeah, well, we went back through and had to cross the creek. We went across our farm.
The 6th line over.
Yeah, and
A bit of a walk, eh?
well, it was a fair walk, yeah. We used to go back through Steve's and they had a gobbler. And
Turkey gobbler.
he sure kept us hopping and telling.
Oh dear.
The story about the shoes. The shoes.
Which gap?
The shoes in the mud. You got your shoes stuck in the mud one time.
Oh,
When they were cutting through, and everybody else went on home, and Mom was afraid to go home because she'd lost her shoes were stuck in the mud. And at that time, my grandmother did not have money to buy another pair of shoes. So Mom talks a lot about these shoes being lost in the mud.
Wow.
So that was quite a consequence at that age.
How did you solve that one?
well, I just said, just braved it and had to go home. I was scared to stay away.
You couldn't get them pulled out, or you couldn't find them?
Oh, no, I found them, but they were in the mud right up to the top. I don't know how they didn't leak. I've forgotten now, but
Yes.
you know, of course I got a spanking. We got spankings in those days. You know.
I remember.
Didn't hurt us any
I
either.
remember those.
Yeah,
So that was a little one-room school, Peacock?
yeah. Mm-hmm. It was a beautiful school, though.
Yes.
It was a fairly new school.
Mm-hmm. Number 5, was it?
Yeah,
Yeah.
or 4.
Not,
Yes, that's them, maybe.
not sure, anyway.
I'm not sure either.
Remember any teachers there, or are they all
Oh,
from other?
Martha Smith and Marguerite Smith,
Mm-hmm.
2 sisters.
So they'd be teaching 8 grades at once, I guess.
Oh, yeah. And Miss Williamson was another teacher I had.
Oh.
They were good teachers back then. Oh, well.
Mm-hmm.
But they had a handful, really. Teaching 8 grades is...
I know.
Whew. And Grace went there to teach.
Oh, did she?
Yeah,
That's your
after she was married.
Your sister-in-law.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's how Uncle Jesse and Grace met, wasn't it? She came to teach and lived in Alma.
Yes.
So she wasn't from this community, and that's how they met.
Yeah. But I remember her as my Sunday school teacher, and
Yes.
pretty live wire. She's one of the more interesting teachers that I remember.
Yeah.
Grace was. So the hardest part of life in those days, not having money to
Not
buy the
having any
shoes.
money to buy anything.
Yeah.
And well, now I'm telling you, Mother had to see, my sister lived over on the first line. She was married by the time I'm talking, I don't know. And, what was it going to say, Catherine?
Well, just your mother was, had a hard time making ends meet, I guess.
Oh, We didn't have any money for anything. Well, that's it now. And I remember Mother getting down on her knees and praying for 2 cents to send a letter to her, my sister. It was just around the tribe, like
Yes.
the...
Just around the block, so
Yeah.
to speak, yeah.
Mhm.
So your father had died by that time?
Oh,
eh?
yes.
He died when you were about how old?
Well, Catherine says I was 8. He died in 1928.
Yeah, so you were 8,
And,
Uh-huh.
yeah.
Aunt Pearlie was 13, and
And
Jesse was
that's
16.
15, and he had, yeah.
So he had to take over the farm then?
He had to.
Yeah.
There was nothing else for it.
He must have managed.
Well, yeah, well, Mother did an awful lot of work, though. Oh, heavy work.
And you young people would do some work too.
Well, I guess we did, but I was going to school, maybe.
Mom did her share of farming much after she was married, though. She was a good partner in the whole farming operation, milking
Uh-huh.
cows and everything, basically. And I'm not sure whether it'll come up, but we were talking earlier about the thrashings and how the community helped each other out with a lot of different farm events. And the Sinclairs were the thrashers in the community and went from area to area. So I also remember the thrashings of all, like everybody being there. And you finished one farmer's place and went to another place to do the harvest.
So they had a thrashing machine, the
Yes.
Sinclair?
Oh, yeah.
Yes. And
Fred
a
was
ste-
the
and a
main
steam-
operator.
Fred,
Right,
eh?
and a steam engine originally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Didn't the Rogers have a thrashing machine too at some point?
Sounds to me like they did. They did.
I think so.
I think so. Uh-huh.
Anyway. Yeah, so that was the kind of thing that would bring a community together.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, those. You used to listen for the thrash machine. They always came the night before.
Oh, yeah.
And you listened for the machine coming, and knew you'd have these extra people for night and breakfast the next morning.
And dinner and supper, because
Yeah.
they worked. You had 2 big meals that you had to get ready.
Some of the neighbor women would come in and help you cook, I hope.
Oh, I expect they did, but
Yeah. Right.
like Uncle Bob's way, Aunt Maggie met probably a
Yeah.
few went there.
So Bob was also your uncle, eh?
Oh, yeah. Mhm.
Right. So it seems the community changed because young people had to leave to make a living somehow.
That's
and,
right. Mm-hmm.
It was quite a turnover of people.
And then there was more and more interest in becoming known in education.
Yeah.
You know, because before that there was nobody much. Well, I guess Jessie McKay was one, but
Yeah.
she couldn't stay home because
Yeah.
you couldn't be at home and get that education.
She and Archie went to the city, I think.
I think they did, yeah.
Earl went to Brampton, maybe, as a...
I don't know what he did.
He was in Brampton. Whether that's where he originally went or not, I'm not
Yeah.
sure.
We're hoping to interview Bill McKay,
Mhm.
Oh, yeah.
Earl's son.
Mhm.
What can you say about the community these days, since you're still living there, Catherine? You've seen a lot of changes since you were a child in the spirit of the community or in the activities. Can you tell us a bit about the region around the Fed these days?
Certainly a lot of changes from when I was growing up, and as I mentioned, I'm one of only 2 families who are really still living in the area, so there isn't that same family connection. I think people are more disjointed, perhaps, gathered for different reasons, be it sports activities or be it the church, but there's not that same family. When I was growing up, they used to say everybody was related to everybody else, and that's certainly not the case anymore. A lot of commuter families, a lot of our neighbors commute to Toronto, to Kitchener, to Mississauga. I personally commute to Oakville, so there's a lot of that kind of changes as well. So very few, if any, farmers actually make a living off a mixed farm operation. There are still some, but the majority have an outside job or outside income as well.
Did you socialize back and forth with any of those newer families as neighbors?
Just our immediate area.
Yeah.
But it's not the same. It's more of a casual relationship. It's not back and forth the same way. We're not a part of their lives, basically. You know, we depend on each other for certain things, but it's not certainly who we spend our social times with.
Who would that be, if I can ask?
Just connections from our work, connections from extended family who don't live in the area, connections through teams our kids have played on, you know, various sports activities. That was our world for a long time as our children were growing up, with sports activities. So outside contacts from being outside the community, I guess, more than anything.
Where did they go? Where did you have to take them for the sports?
Various times they played out of Erin, they played out of Acton, they played out of Georgetown, and they played out of Limehouse. That's my children went to school in Limehouse. So that's where they started off, and as they got into the more advanced teams, then we moved into the towns kind of around the area for sports.
Did they go by bus from your place to Limehouse?
To school, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
That was a long trip.
Oh, yes. I had done the same trip. I went to Limehouse in the last 2 years of my public school as well. So I was quite used to busing, so it wasn't something that really bothered me. But because of where we live, the same was the case when I was growing up. My children were the first on the bus in the morning and the last off the bus at night. So they got very used to buses. That's for sure.
You want to say just something about one or two of the neighbor families, because we don't have much information on them. Where do they commute to, or how do they come there? Are they rich or poor or professional? Or just give us a couple of examples of families that you know around here.
I'm new to the community. Have a few families that are retired and have lived and made their living in Toronto area, retired to the country. They tend to all be very well off because the homes in our area are usually attached to 1 to 10 acres, so they're quite expensive. So it's a higher income level of people certainly that are moving into the area. The ones that commute now, I would say probably Mississauga, Brampton, and those are probably the two places people commute to the most.
Any of them keeping hobbies or any horses in your area? On the ninth
yes,
line there's some.
There's the ranch down the ninth line, Wildwood.
Tell them about the school that's going in. The school.
Well, there's supposed to be a private school
Did you know
going
that?
to be built on Floyd Shortall's property on the 8th line.
Private school.
A private school, which is an equestrian school, as well as a private school as well.
Wow.
It's actually been in the works for about 3 years. Neighbors have been opposed to it, and it was just approved last week by the OMB. So it's probably going to be happening.
Why would the neighbors be opposed to it?
Traffic, increased traffic on the 8th line. It's a very narrow road, although it's paved, and concerns about the water. To have this kind of a facility are the main things that they were objecting to. We weren't a part of that. It's not that close to us, I guess.
I suppose if they're retired, they don't have any children to send to the school either.
That's right. Nor could they probably. Well, some people did endorse it. That's what a lot of people said. It's going to be bringing students in from outside the area. But anyway, it sounds like it's going to happen.
I see. So maybe to end off, Alma, what would you say that you contributed to this community over all the years you were there, and what did it contribute to you?
I hope I contributed something.
Well, I'm sure you did. What groups were you part of besides the choir and the church? Were you
And the Women's Institute.
Yes.
And probably whatever the children were in at the time, you know.
Do you want to say a little bit about the Women's Institute? We've not heard very much about it from anyone yet. What were they doing?
Well, I don't know enough about it now. It's a long time since I went to Institute.
When you were there, what did they have you doing? Were you?
Oh, it was a very active community organization. They were always helping out with things in the community and
fundraising
For what,
activities?
it's for home and country.
Okay,
That's their motto.
I see.
Mhm.
Right. Someone said Ada Kirkwood might have information on that. Do you remember
Well,
her?
she could, oh yes, quite well. And
Yeah.
she might have, she was a great institute woman
Okay.
and very interested. I don't know how well she is anymore, but
It was certainly a group that wanted to educate farm women
yeah.
on worldly kinds of things and different topics besides your own community, much more outreaching to get so people have got a perspective of what was happening in the world. Current events were
Yeah.
one of the things I know
You
that
see,
they
the
covered
reason
when
that
they were there.
the institute was organized in the first place was because this woman had lost a child. And they said that was the trouble, was not what to do with the milk, Catherine. Pasteurizing the milk.
I see. Well,
So that's when they decided, not Ballinafad, but I mean, that's when the institute started to take action.
I see.
And they did a lot of trips, like trips the women went on to see different historical things or something like that. They're just going to say, looks like that picture you've got there with the bus.
Do you remember that?
Oh, boy.
It's a long time ago.
Yeah, Mom has that
Let
picture.
me see if I'm in there.
Yes, you are. There's your name. Right
Oh,
there.
yeah, Oh, I don't know, that's...
Okay, well, I think we should wrap up then. You seem to have fairly warm memories of Ballinafad, I guess.
Oh, Ballinafad will always be home. For me,
Somehow for me too, I guess, as well.
yeah.
Even though I've been away like the prodigal son for a long time.
Yeah, but
You're always welcome back, though, right?
Good. Well, thanks very much, Alma and Catherine. Appreciate
you're quite
your
welcome.
input.
I was glad to be able to add something to it.
Yeah,